Welcome. This is part 2 of our conversation with Chief Inspector Julius Kangèntu on humanizing the National Police Service. Please welcome. What would you say has been, other than the fact that officers come to you for counseling, you don't have to call them, what do you think else has changed within the National Police Service?
Well, one of the initiatives that has brought about the great achievement that we are now talking about, one, I could just remember unconsciously and driven by the inner force, by the inner drive, by the inner passion. When I started a journey of making sure that when an officer comes into an office, he sits down so that at least he can relax and be listened and be able to share what could be affecting him or her. And this journey started whenever I came back to my line when I worked in Meru North. I made sure that I just lift up my hands and greet those that were outside of their houses because I never used to stay on the line. And when I went to the office, I made sure that I joined my senior, my corporal, who is my senior by then, and the sergeant and the senior sergeant, where they used to sit down. And then when I just requested them, could you allow me sit down? And then they say, have a seat, Kang'entu. Then when I sit down and anybody comes, I request them whether that person can also sit down and probably just to relax and be able to talk what brings him there or her. And that I advanced the same to the security, to the one that handled discipline, that is the regimental sergeant major, within whose office again, I requested whenever anybody came, I posted the same request. Could you have him sit down or her sit down so that probably he can relax? And this worked for 7 years. I was able to register that it has worked because when I left Meru North, officers used to come and sit down there and gained confidence with their command at the district level because this happened. The journey that had started became a success. And my commander never knew until when I told them because they didn't. They organized something for me when I was leaving Meru North. In fact, they gave me transport. The commanders gave me something to carry my luggages, to carry my luggages and to travel back to travel to my new station. And I told them I want to appreciate you because today officers come and sit down and you're able to interact with the relaxed officers. The same case I did when I came to the training college. It was not easy because that was a new environment where I faced challenges that I never encountered before. The first time when I encountered a question, what are you going to do at home, when I requested for permission? The first time when I was told that the sergeant ni Kitubure hapa, huko district ilikuwa ni Kitu, but here ni Kitubure. And I appreciate it, sir. Thank you, because I've never known this and that I've known I'll behave accordingly. And I remember another time that I was told that kazi yako hapa ni kuhakikisha hii compound ya church inang'ara kila mahali. Kazi yako ni fatigue. And I told my senior pastor, thank you, sir. I appreciate. Now that I've known, I'll make sure that the place is clean. And in fact, I made it because I made sure that the compound is clean. And I told him one day, in 18th of April 2008, I reiterated that I pray that God keeps me to see young men celebrate weddings here in this compound, within which we are the snakes threatening the security of children and even adults. And somebody celebrated a wedding in 2014. And I was on assignment. I came back to the college to see the wedding happen, and then went back. I didn't take food, I didn't even take time, but I just came to see a wedding celebrated.
Oh, that's definitely a tangible, and observable change.
Yes.
That occurred, and out of the drive and the passion that you had for the work that you're doing right now, do you see any barriers of police or law enforcement officers seeking counseling services from the department?
Well, like it is with other institutions. You realize police, again, being a unique institution with unique challenges and unique needs, you realize these are soft skills, and again, police officers culturally are meant to be hand, in quotes, because again, in psychology, we are now inculcating other values and other realizations that police officers are human beings. They are fathers, they are mothers and brothers and sisters who need these soft skills so that the parent, the children, the mother, the wife, the spouse can be able to find the same husband, the same wife who went on duty that was combating in nature. So when he's coming back, he needs these soft skills to make him human, to humanize him after a hand task. So that is one of the challenges, appreciation of counseling. But again, in the journey of establishing counseling at the Trinity College, it was not easy because there was no time, there was no the need, there was no the need was not realized. But because the Ministry of Education has given accreditation, it became easier for us to penetrate and to establish, to make it one of the college standard procedures. The other one, to establish a chapter in the SSO, which we did in 2012, 2013. One of the challenges was the issue of facilitation initially, because when you don't know what this commodity is all about, or what this service is all about, how do you invest in what you don't really understand what it means to the human resource? So that became a challenge at the early stages. But again, along the way, when officers started changing and started realizing that there was an impact in their lives and also in their work productivity, work performance and productivity. Now this is started attracting support, because I remember if this one did not support, one of the officers did not support, the other one was able to support. And this took us, we took the initiative of now anytime I attended a meeting, I talked about counseling. It is entrenched within the policy that counseling, we offer free services to the family and to the spouse. But any other person, of course, because I'm a professional, I'm a police officer and a professional. As a professional, I am no limitations. But as a police officer, I'm limited to the families, to the officers and the families, and of course the civilian who are within the police service. But again, as a professional, I also offer services to civilians, like I get a student from our universities for therapy sessions, and others probably who are brought by other people for attention. So more often I might get a case once in a while. But again, you realize my job becomes more critical because I might not take work with a student from universities when I have a lot to work with within the service. So like I worked sometimes on consultation with the Kenya Institute of Professional Counseling, but again I descended to send from that because of the workload here, especially when we were establishing counseling here.
Wow. World over, I know that statistics show that suicide and depression and substance abuse within the law enforcement officers, or with police officers, is higher than the general population. I mean, within the police service, it's higher than the general population. Is that something that you would want to tell us about? Has this counseling department really helped in changing those statistics?
Thank you, Lucy. First of all, I want to appreciate that police officers are a product of the society, the larger society. Yeah. Looking at the statistics of depression in the country, in 2017-2018, Kenya registered 1.9 million cases of depression.
That is within the law enforcement?
No,
okay.
The general population.
Yes.
At the same time, in 2017, we lost a bigger number than any other year, And realizing police officers and just members are a product of the same society existing within the same population. What do you expect? You expect them, of course, to be replicas of the society from which they are coming from. But again, police officers police occupation is one of the occupations that are highly stressed because of unique stresses, unique expectations, unique culture, and unique needs. So you find them. But again, I want to challenge the public, the notion from the public that higher numbers of police officers commit suicide. It is not true. The only thing is that they are placed at a point as an entity that everybody is looking at. In fact, like in the year 2018, we reached 2018, 2019, we registered 15 cases. But in the general population, we had a very big number. Like in my location, we lost, last year we lost 6 people. But this year, the same period, 2019, 2020, we have only registered cases, suicide ideation, see only 6 cases.
That's within the law enforcement.
Yes, within the, only. We have registered only 6 cases of suicide ideation between 2019 and 2020. The question that you posed made me now to think about myself. Anytime I felt like after handling some debriefing sessions where we have lost officers, or whenever we have an accident that has affected our officers and have attended the survivors or the families or relatives, at one point I realized that I need to have a bumper. Why I fall back.
Yeah.
And anytime I handled certain issues, I realized I need to empower my family so that when I go back, they are able to appreciate that there are certain issues that affected my mind, affected my psychological setups, and therefore I needed support. So I invested happiness, I invested joy in them and strength in them, so that when I go back, I'm able to draw energy from them, and as I go back to serve again, I'm at least energized again. And this principle came up that I need to invest energy in them, to invest happiness in them, so that I may have a bank from them. And the same case, I introduced my own children when we are doing counseling sensation in Kiambu, introducing my son and my daughter sometimes. My son who was Kiambu by then as a practitioner in nursing. Sometimes I could invite him to join us in one of the sub-counties and be part of us, so that they could feel attached to my family to a certain extent and see the value and what it means to them as individuals.
What would you say is a role of humor in the work that you're doing?
Humor is a critical aspect in psychology. We have what we call the neurotransmitter, or the hormones that the happy or the pleasure hormones that make us be the way we are. When humor is therapeutic, and it is one of the aspects that we encourage in stress management, trauma management, humor, being humorous. But again, you see culturally, officers and security, police officers have thought sura ya kazi is really a quality. But again, it is a mental related aspect that is retrogressive in nature. How do you acquire it? One is that you become socialized to adrenaline addiction that brings a face, brings a kind of demeanor that is relative to what we are oriented to face. In the process of training a police officer, he is told that your life is, you are out for death when ni chombo cha risasi. Yeah? So you grow. The civilian that you see are enemies. So anytime a police officer is opening the door and meets a multitude, these are 98% of these are criminals. And the 2% who are not must be police officers. So what happens? Adrenaline, kind of adrenaline rise to prepare him for fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah. So over time, the person becomes socialized and develops a socialized adrenaline addiction. So he develops a face. So anytime he is under threat, which is existing and not existing. And that is why humor becomes very critical.
Yeah.
That's why we encourage involving self with social activities.
Yeah.
Maybe engaging social activities, so that at least you can be able to recover, to re-energize, and at least to have to be centered.
And looking at the culture familiarity, because you've worked in both, like we said, and you're culturally competent with, the culture within the police.
Yes.
How effective would be a non-civilian who probably would want to work within the department, maybe on pro bono basis, or they would just want to be part of what you're doing? How effective would that be?
One, as a professional, we want to appreciate that one can make maybe the contact, but again, you require some kind of orientation.
Yes.
Like when we first got our first priest, they were to be taken through a training, like any other police officer,
Yeah.
and they underwent the training so that they could be able to have a touch of the culture,
Yes.
and to have a touch of the police nature, police life. The same case applies to these professionals, to make a touch, so that they don't see you as a stranger, you don't appear like a stranger, you have a touch of what really happens with the police officers. You don't have only the book experience about police profession, but you have a tangible, you have a practical experience of what happens.
And finally, before we end, I just wanted to find out how have you been able to reduce stigma and minimize the fear that is associated with counseling within the police, the police service. How have you managed that? Because I guess you've talked about the orientation, and the way the public look at the police force and the training that the police officers have gone through. How are you able to do that?
One, ensuring confidentiality.
Yes.
Ethical issues are very critical. You realize police profession is one of the most suspicious occupation. So as a counselor, you have to stick to your ethical, you must be within the confines of the ethics. Keeping secret is very critical.
Yes.
Appreciating officers as human beings is very important. And again, you see, in a civilian in most of the occasions. And officers who fear that the information got picked from their issues is likely to be used for incrimination. And that is one of the things that I have to appreciate, that that you have to define the boundaries between other procedures and counseling.
Yes.
So anytime an officer enters here, if he has to, I have to create an environment where he feels comfortable.
Yes.
And he immediately realizes a difference from the other environment. And that's why they will never know my rank if they never saw me in uniform. That's why I will never introduce myself by rank. And I have encouraged this. And I never took any position in the college as probably as a in a position like any other instructor. Yeah. I took a position like a person, like a human person. And at one time I was called human rights, because I used to listen what was never listened. I used to give touch to what was never noticed. In 2012, 2011, and 2013, I taught psychology in 2012, 2011, and sociology. I was called human rights because in the class I could find an officer who was affected, a recruit who needed psychological attention, and advised the trainer, the training officer, and the chief instructor on the kind of approach and out there to attend this. And then later I was nicknamed human rights. And I decided now to train on human rights in 2013, 2014. Why? Because I want to create an environment where this officer feels free and the trainee feels free. You make human, you humanize these trainees so that they can be able to relate with the Kenyans in a human and a humane way. You make them become connected so that they are connected even when they are serving the Kenyans.
Oh, wow.
They're in contact with themselves. They value themselves, so they have value for humanity as they serve humanity.
Wow. So you've worked a lot to create an environment that the police officers can appreciate, and ensuring that the information between you as a therapist and counselor and themselves is them understanding that information is privileged is important as they come and they consume the services.
Exactly.
Yes. So finally, I wanted to ask, the American Psychological Association recognize the need to look at the police enforcement, the police enforcement or law enforcement as a special population. What do you think about this? Do you think that is something that needs to be looked at? Do you think it should happen? What do you think?
Well, in the classical way, probably one would feel that this is not necessary. But again, I think realizing one of the aspects that have been highlighted by various studies is that police occupation is the most stressful occupation. Two, we have unique needs for the police. We have a unique nature. We have unique challenges that affect the police. And therefore, this classifies police officers as a separate entity. And of course, this can put them as people who have special needs. And this now can qualify them to be given special attention, looking at it. Like now we talk of a case where a police officer has just responded to an emergency and then probably by bad luck shoots. Nobody takes time to establish the mental situation of that officer, because at the time that probably is taken for prosecution, the mental situation is different as opposed to the way he was at that time. Maybe he has been in Lamu, he has survived attacks on Lamu, attacks over Sabab, he has survived accident in various occasions and never been debriefed. He has survived maybe Katru Rastala's occasion, and so he has never dealt with the trauma. And so this time he becomes reactive. He's only reacting unconsciously. And this puts him at a point that he looked at us as a special case, or as a special, in a special category, can be able to provide an opportunity for them to be attended appropriately. Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good summary of what the reason that informs the setting up establishment of the counseling department within the National Police Service. That it's a very stressful and unique, police officers having unique needs, and the environment in which they work.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why this is important. So we really appreciate that we had time with you, Inspector Kang'entu. Thank you so much for the time and for giving of yourself to do this work, sometimes going the extra mile, and to do what you think is important. I guess you're living out the fact that we all keep saying that be the change that you would want to see.
That's true.
And when you observe a need, you have a responsibility. So that is exactly what you're doing, and we really appreciate the work that you're doing. I think this needs to be highlighted.
Thank you.
What is happening within the law enforcement and the National Police Service need to be highlighted. The changes that are happening, the changing face of the police through the counseling department, that needs to be highlighted. And we really appreciate that you give us the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we had an amazing time with Chief Inspector Julius Kangèntu. This was a really mind-boggling. It was eye-opening. It is a conversation that's really taught us that there's a lot to learn about the police, and the work that is happening within this department is definitely humanizing the National Police Service. Thank you so much.
Okay.